All right, it is 1 o'clock. Just checking with our production person. Should we get started now, John?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and joining us for today's informative and insightful webinar. During the next 45 minutes, we will be speaking with Michael Knopf about my favorite subject, and that's data analytics, and specifically how he is using analytics to track, manage, and visualize equipment performance in the yard and on the job site. So a little bit about Michael. He is the operations manager for McClone's Washington area. I absolutely love that area. Try to get up there whenever I can. And he plays a significant role in their analytics journey. Good afternoon, or should I say good morning, Michael?
Yeah, good morning here. Good morning.
Listen, I want to say thank you for taking the time out. I know you had to be at a job site at 5 a.m. this morning and making it back to this webinar. So, thanks on behalf of, Pronovos and myself. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So I'm Bruce Orr. I'm the founder and chief data scientist for Pronovos Construction Analytics. So in full transparency to our audience, this is kind of like my disclaimer. I want to mention that McClone Construction is using the Pronovos platform to manage their construction operations, and they also use Pronovos as their enterprise reporting and analytical solution. However, with that said, today's webinar is not meant to highlight Pronovos or any particular technology, not at all. Instead, we will be talking about how McClone, a 40-year-old company with over 1,000 employees, transformed themselves from a paper-based Microsoft Excel-driven organization, like I'm sure we all are, familiar with, into a construction firm that uses analytics daily to drive higher profits, improve the quality of their work, and eliminate redundant data entry. Quite frankly, I could go on and on, but the biggest thing that I personally noticed is how they've changed their data culture within their organization. I think many construction companies are aspiring to do that, and I know many are doing that. So without further ado, I'd like to kick this off and have Michael give us a rundown of McClone, the type of work that they do, and a little bit about their operations.
Yeah, so McClone Construction, like you said, been around for 40 plus years. We're a concrete package and formwork company, and mostly focusing on commercial concrete work. We're in 5 states, or 5 areas, I'll say: Hawaii, California, Texas, Colorado, and Washington, where I am. And we probably have 80 to 100 office personnel, 750 to about 1,000 guys in the field, something like that, depending on how busy we are.
Okay, so you guys are a good sized company, and it sounds like, well, you guys are geographically spread out. And so one thing I've learned about commercial construction, which I've learned a lot in the time that I've been working with you guys, but there's one thing that I could never wrap my head around, and it's the equipment piece. So this is what I know. I know that you own some, you rent some, you transfer equipment from the yard to the job to the job, and I know you guys use it every day, but tell me a little bit about how much equipment we're talking about. I mean, and probably a general overview of the process.
Sure. So yeah, each office has got to be a couple $1 million worth of equipment stored in our yard. We have 5 to 10 acre lots that we have just outside of all of our major office areas that store our equipment. And we manage it as you would imagine. We have a yard manager that's there, keeps track of the equipment flow in and out, is responsible for keeping up on inventory, responsible for receiving the requests or transfer request equipment that we needed out on the job site, and loads the trucks as well. So we have some people out there that are helping him load out, but he's mostly responsible for the equipment and keeping track of it, making sure that it's flows to the projects appropriately.
Okay. So now I'm trying to put this into perspective. So McClone, a 40-year-old company, you've been able to grow by working with whatever technology you had at the time. So, I'm curious to know a little more about the evolution process, and, specifically around technology and how, McClone has used technology to manage equipment.
Yeah, so, call it 10 plus years ago, back when I started, we did everything on carbon copy. You'd write out the transfer or the list of equipment that you would want or that you plan on having on the truck. Write it all down, write the quantity that you want on there. You'd go into your weights book and you'd calculate how much weight it's going to be, because we need to track how much weight's on each truck so we don't overload the trucks. And everything was very manual. It was a lot of work for the crews. It was a lot of work for the project managers. We tracked our equipment back then, but it was more, hey, I'm going to go through all these, paper copies, dirty paper copies of transfers once a month. Write down the equipment that was on there, and kind of calculate what we think is on the job site based on that. It was you can imagine there's some holes in the process. People wouldn't always fill out the transfers, and you'd get people just coming in and out of the yard just grabbing stuff. So the quantities weren't very accurate, but it worked for us. That's kind of what was there at the time.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of work that was placed on the PM, and it was probably time intensive. Is that right?
Yeah, the audits were intensive for sure, once a month. And going through and, we did cost our jobs back then, meaning that you want to charge the project for the equipment that's on site. So it was a lot of manual work going back and making sure and verifying everything that was on there.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine that. And it's not like PMs have a ton of time on their hands. So
no, we always have the thought of, we want the PMs to focus on management, not so much on, paperwork. So something in McClone that we're always trying to move towards is making sure that the guys are doing what they're good at, which is managing projects and not just paperwork. So,
yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. But from then we moved on to Excel, and I like Excel. I'm an Excel fan. So we took basically the form that we had, the paper copy of the form, reformatted it and built an Excel sheet for it. And that was a huge improvement. It was good to be able to get out of just a paper copy and have at least a job copy and a summary of the stuff and that was sent on the job. You can imagine once it's in Excel, there's like a summary sheet where you could link up and you could start to calculate what's on the job versus what got shipped off the job. So it was actually a pretty souped up sheet, I'll say, for Excel. There was macros with it, and it was as good as you can get it in Excel. And it was a huge improvement from the paper, doing from the paper front. It wasn't, it still had some holes in it, but it was definitely better than what it was.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Excel was a game changer for a lot of companies. But let me stop you right there. Okay, so we got 5 offices across the U.S. with central yards for equipment. I can imagine that there's a lot of logistics that need to be coordinated. And you guys were doing all of this with paper forms, and then you moved to Excel. The transition must have been difficult, but tell me a little bit about the process. Was that a difficult process for you guys?
Depending on who it was for, not for the project managers, it was a benefit for them. They could just jump onto the server and open up the Excel sheets, and it was better. Linking Excel sheets, I guess, is better than trying to do a paper audit and track what you had, because they had their own version of a tracker. Each PM did as well. So it was a step up from there, and it was a better transition for those involved from the management standpoint. But for the superintendent, for the site guys, the foreman, it was a little more difficult. You can imagine, they've got their clipboard. The clipboard's got, I don't know if you've seen the aluminum ones where you just shove all the papers in there. If you need a new transfer, you just pull it out, write it, give it to the truck driver. they were used to that thought process and that kind of workflow. So transitioning to a computer to write those out, some guys adapted, some guys like that. They want to jump in and be able to see what's on their computer and work from their computer. But from the old schoolers, I'll call them, the ones that have been doing it for 25 years that way on paper, yeah, it took a little bit of time. You know, it was something that you just kind of got to gently nudge them, show them the benefits. You know, there were things that were nice for them as well, as far as, you know, a little bit less work to be able to, so that they know what's on site and everything else. But it took a little bit of work.
Yeah, no, for sure. So you went from paper to Excel, ran into challenges in Excel, and obviously you didn't stay in the world of Excel, so you decided, you know, to move on. What are some additional challenges that you guys had as a company in Excel?
Yeah, so Excel was great for job site inventory. Being able to see and track the information that was in one spot, it actually worked fairly well. As you try to manage the equipment from an operational standpoint, so Washington, we have 10 or 15 jobs going on just in our area. Each of our areas are pretty similar. So you got what, 40, 50 jobs, whatever that is going on. If you're trying to, at the company level, start to really manage and make sure that you're staying efficient and tracking and really analyzing the equipment at that level, it was lost. It was really lost after the job site level. As we, you think about what it takes to purchase equipment and wondering what you have rented on every job and wondering, really what it looks like as an operational area and how you're performing, Excel just doesn't quite go there. We even tried linking sheets and having the super Excel sheet that did it, and it was just too. It was Excel would crash, or you'd lose a file and it would kind of be gone because it wasn't stored in a database. So it was good. It was a step in the right direction, but it just didn't quite get us what we needed to do to get to our end goal.
Yeah, no, I get it, and I can imagine the problems that you were facing, and it sounds like something had to change in order to improve. So now we understand the journey of where you've been. Tell us a little bit about your process today. I think that's what our audience really, would love to learn is what are you doing today? We know how you got here, but yeah, what's it like today?
Yeah, so I'll share my screen here.
Okay.
And like you said before, there's, we looked at a couple different equipment programs. All of them have their positives and negatives. So you just kind of got to find what works for the company and the way that they have their setup. Can you see that my screen come across okay?
Yes, I can see it.
Perfect. So, so this is, as you said before, we chose Pronovos Ops Manager. And there's a couple things that you just want to make sure, just very baseline things that you need just to start the analytics. I think that's worth showing. The first one is just the equipment models, or just the ability to register a piece of equipment. So this has nothing to do with accounts or projects or anything like that. This is just, are you storing information about each piece of equipment? It gives it an ID number, if you can imagine, kind of in the background. Some other piece of information, the manufacturer, the weight, a picture of it. But it's very important just to have the registration of your equipment baseline. One thing that was hard to do in Excel, I'll say as well.
Mm-hmm.
From there, the next part, obviously the first thing that you get, and the easy thing, the low hanging fruit, I'll say, is just your inventory. So getting out of Excel, getting into a place where you can right now. So the software allows you to break up into operational area. We might jump into another one depending on what transfers are available. I got to check it out. But we're going to hang in Washington. That's my default. I can look at all of this piece of equipment and where it sits at the company level, or at the operational area level, I should say. So as I'm looking at upcoming jobs, if I want to know, hey, we got a job coming up that is going to use these aluminum frames. This is a shoring frame. And we're going to need, sometimes we'll have a couple thousand on one job. I can go over here and just quickly look and see how many do I own. A pretty, again, baseline piece of information that you want to know as you're looking at your equipment. What do you have available? Or if you are trying to track it down, you want to look at certain areas. You want to be able to get down and drill down into particular projects so you can see, hey, where's my cantilever at? Where's, whatever piece of equipment that you're looking for, or if you're looking at a particular piece of job site, to really know what's where. This is kind of 101. Everything, as far as the model and the inventory goes, it's controlled kind of through this the overview process. It's fairly straightforward. What you're looking at here is different states of a transfer. And a transfer, all a transfer is a truck's worth of equipment, whatever it may be. It could be a couple tools, or it could be 50,000 pounds of formwork, whatever it may be. You have a draft spot here. So if you're building one out, the transfer would populate here. We use the controller feature. So we have a yard manager that approves all of the requests that get sent in. And a request is just a form that says, I need this piece of equipment. So if someone has a request and they're saying that they need something, it will populate in here. Once the yard manager looks at the equipment and approves it, or basically, confirms that they can get a time for whenever we have the availability to drop it off at the job site, and that we have the equipment in the yard, they will schedule the transfer, just a button that you hit to schedule the transfer. Afterwards, once you send it off, it'll go to this unaccepted state. Then this is just the receiver needs to accept the load and make sure that everything that was on it is what they thought it was, and then it kind of just goes into the log. But just to specify a transfer, I'm gonna open this one up on here. It's fairly straightforward, right? You have your pickup information, what time you're going to pick up the trailer, what time you're going to drop it off in case you need to coordinate it. The pickup, where it's going to come from, where it's going to go, who your contact information is on it. And then it's just a list of equipment that's on there. This one's in yellow in here. So everything that comes through with the gray background is tracked, meaning that we can run data analytics on it. We'll have all the information stored about that. If you just need to throw something on there that, they had wood wedges, it's not really anything that is tracked, and it was just a random thing that they got up at the yard that they had to ship out. Shows up in yellow like this, so you can kind of add whatever you want. But this is, I'll say, the beginning really of what's required to make sure that you can just start your data analytics. You need to have this basic information so that you can start to digest some of the information from there on a couple of reports kind of that I'll show here in a little bit.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, really good stuff. You've walked us through the process of capturing and managing equipment company-wide. And I'll just be honest, many applications out there probably do something very similar.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I would just want to point one thing out, and it's with every piece of equipment that you enter or move in the system, it's creating data. Is that right?
Yep. So we have access to basically a huge log that gives us all of the information that we have on all the transfers, all the quantities, all the pieces, parts, counts, weights, everything that comes up we can access, everything that is through the system we can access.
Oh, okay. So here we go. If there's one thing I know without a shadow of a doubt, it is that the industry is not lacking data. So now we have ops manager that's not only helping you, manage the workflow of equipment, but it's just producing more data. So there's a common saying in the industry, which is we have too much data and not enough insight. And truly in this age of data overload, we're finding that what you do with the data is increasingly becoming just as important as the data that you're capturing. So historically, we would run simple reports like how much equipment is on hand, or reports related to the cost of equipment. But there's a new school of thought, and actually it's not so new, it's just somewhat new to our industry. But it says, hey, let's not just run reports on the data, let's be more interactive and engaging with the data. Let's run analytics on the data. So I'm just going to segue a little bit from the traditional, capturing and managing equipment and data to the analytics piece. Before I do that, Michael, I'm just going to ask you, can you differentiate between reports and analytics for me? I'd love to hear your version of what you think the difference is.
Yeah, so I guess for me, reports is just a way to access, I guess, analytics or the data that's behind there. I'm not a huge fan of the analytic term. I like to think of things as more business intelligence. You hear BI tools, right? So there's the Tableaus or the MicroStrategies or whatever you have. That's your tool to be able to visualize data. But the goal ultimately is business intelligence. How can you take that information and turn it into something that you can utilize to measure your company and measure its success? So can you become intelligent through the data about your company? Not the, hey, how's it going on the job site? And superintendent says it's going good. And then you're like, okay, well, the job's going good. So you hang up the phone. But show me that the job is going well. There's too much information out there to not be able to gauge it yourself. So yeah, for me, business intelligence, BI is a big one.
No, I love it. I love it. You can't manage what you can't measure. So you got me here. So I love to hear a little more about the intelligence aspect of it. So tell me what you got there. Or show me if you can.
Yeah, so going to it's funny we say reporting. So going to the reporting section to look at the business intelligence. There's a couple reports. We'll focus obviously just on equipment.
Hey, let me just jump in real quick. Sorry to cut you off. But what you're showing now, you just went from the operations manager to like a reporting section. Now, since this is Pronovos, I'm very familiar with the platform. I just want to say that the information that McClone needs to run their business and use intelligence, this is essentially what you guys determined that you needed based on the 1,000 people within your organization and all of that. You guys did this.
Yeah, so you start with kind of a canned report, I'll say, to those who don't know, I know you know, but you start with the canned report and then you can kind of modify it from there. So obviously the inventory report is a very basic one. All the information that's just associated with it is given to you. And then we put our own spin on what we really need as far as what's important to McClone. So inventory, pretty straightforward. Damaged, so we created basically a report that allows us to see all of our damaged equipment and all of our job sites. We found that even for our owned equipment, we found that it doesn't make sense to have one job send a little bit of equipment back as soon as if it gets damaged on the job site, because it's, trucks, what, $750. It happens all the time. But it doesn't make sense just to do it where every job is sending it back as soon as they have a damage, and you don't want damaged equipment on site. So one of the things we did with this report is we waited until all of the projects equate to a truck's load worth of equipment, and we send one truck one day. We schedule with all the jobs, schedule one truck to go pick up all the damaged equipment. So just trying to stay efficient for knowing what's out there kind of at the company level. Owned versus rented. So there's the ability to track what's rented, like not ours, not McClone owned equipment in the software. So this is a report that allows you to basically see how much are you renting on a piece of equipment. It doesn't make sense to purchase it ultimately. I think that's kind of the big thing that we look at about once a year, once every 6 months. We'll run that analysis and say, okay, what do we rent? Are we renting the same thing over and over? Is there a theme that we see on all of our job sites versus how much do we own of that piece of equipment? And maybe it's just something we need to buy and depreciate. So again, having that baseline, finding out what works for you. I know every company is a little bit different. McClone is definitely different than the MEP contractor or whoever else. These are the things that we need. So you can kind of make those tweaks. And I'll show you another tweak that we added to a costing report that we have, which is, I think, the next thing to kind of show. So you can imagine all the transactions are in there. There's the ability to put rental dollars associated with each one of these pieces of equipment. We call it an allocation report. Everyone, maybe it's a rental report for someone else. But what you're looking at here, this is June's report. So this is a transaction of all of the equipment that was sent on or was on the job site on the month of June.
Mhm.
There's some information that you would imagine, and this is the report that we use. We'll turn this into our CFO. So there's basically I know that accounting systems don't like to, we don't like to write to accounting systems. So we decided just to do a CSV. Take our monthly costs for each particular project, just roll it into one CSV, and we give it to our CFO. And our CFO, it's formatted so the CFO just imports it into Sage. So that was one of our goals as we try to get out of Excel. It says, how can we touch this information less? Less copying and pasting, less manual entry for our CFO, right? Let's just stay efficient in the process. This was our goal for staying efficient in the process. We had a zero touch goal, and that's what we came up with. So at this point, through the solutions, we have a foreman or a superintendent that requests equipment. It gets looked at and approved and modified through our yard manager, sent to the job, accepted, sent off the job, all the transactions recorded, and no one actually has to touch anything.
Hey,
There's
Michael.
no Excel sheet to update.
Hey, let me just ask, because I think this is sort of important to point out. We're looking at, in all, this really is a traditional report, but it was information that you guys needed in order to make decisions. There's something that you said, not on this call, but previously, you mentioned that that you wanted to change the way people thought about the equipment. So there's a dollar value associated with it. It's not like you guys charge the owners or anything for the equipment, but you wanted to, this goes back to the data culture. And so would you mind just telling us a little bit about that, and maybe if this report has any relation to that?
Yeah, I think it was the conversation that, having equipment on site just in general costs money. So this is a report to where this covers our depreciation, and it covers maintenance expenses that we have as a company. There are real, even if you own equipment, there are real costs. So you have to put a value to that equipment. So that's us doing it here. We put a value. These are kind of fudge numbers just for everyone, just so everyone knows they're not real.
Just so this is not McCollum's numbers.
The rates aren't. No, we modified them. But these values on here, you want to create worth. You want to create worth for the project team, because you can imagine if you're not doing that, if you're not creating some sort of value, you're just sending equipment to a job site. What would the superintendent care that you get an extra 10,000 square feet of form work, an extra 5 forklifts? If it's owned and it doesn't cost them anything, then there's this gap in reality in the fact that, hey, you could run out of equipment and another job might have to rent it. That job superintendent might not care, but the company cares. So there's a few avenues to where you want to create value in your equipment, just as a culture thought process, and just as good business practices. You want to be able to do that. It's very important. We have found that it's very important.
Yeah, for sure.
So so again, this is probably a report that's nothing new, but there is something on here that's worth discussing. That is a good check for our estimating and what our PMs do when they look at this report every month. So HV, this is a shoring system. If you guys have ever seen, you walk by a job site and they're pouring concrete and the building is progressing vertically. What you do is you put up a shoring system and then you pour concrete on it and then you strip the shoring system. Pretty straightforward. When you're bidding this system, you bid it in square footage, meaning, hey, I need 10,000 square feet of form work, because then it allows us to build 10,000 square feet of the job. You don't bid it in pieces and parts. The system is broken down into main beams and secondary beams and shores. But from an estimating standpoint, that you're never going to say I need 10,000 secondary beams, because it's not engineered at that point. It's just not the way that estimating works for it. So what we did is we created a multiplier that's associated with this equipment for the pieces and parts to give you a square foot value. So now what you can do, this is that extra piece, this is that business intelligence. Now what I can do is I can look at this and go back to my estimate from a quantity standpoint and say, did I bid the correct amount of square footage for the job? Again, these are a little bit fudge numbers, but this job is saying 49,000 square feet. So for the pieces and parts that we have in here with the calculations that we kind of added on, there should be 49,000 square feet of form work or square foot area that we're able to form on this job. What does it say in the estimate? You can go in the estimate and you can look at any durational portion of the job, and you can say, and you can look at what we planned on, and it gives it, hey, the estimate says that we have 40,000 square feet in. Okay, well, on the job right now, we have 49,000 square feet. We have a discrepancy from what we thought was going to happen to what actually happened. And then at that point, it triggers it, right? What's the cause? Is it the schedule changed, so we had to bring more out there, which happens a lot? Is it, hey, we just misbid it? Like, this is the schedule that we thought it was going to be. Just didn't put enough formwork in there. We need to get better at our estimates. It allows you to start creating that analysis and really figuring out at the job site level what's going on. What's going on in the process from putting the dollars on there to executing the work. We missed it somewhere. We need to find out what's going on. And this is one of those big indicators that we have that really is a great double check because it's such an expensive item for us.
You know, I love it. So what you're saying is the way the data is reflected here allows you to compare what you're actually doing to what you estimated to determine where you're going to be at on the job. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. No, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so this was one. You know, I'm an operations guy, obviously, so I'm big on the operations piece, probably more than the dollars and cents piece. But there's one other one I think that's worth showing.
Okay.
And this average transfer time. So this actually came up from an issue that we had here in Washington with our yard manager, and he was talking about the issues that were coming up because we had what we call last minute trucks. So last minute truck is someone basically calling him on the way to the yard saying, hey, I didn't put this piece of equipment on my truck. I need X. I need shore or, you know, a widget, whatever it may be. I need something that's on the truck. What we found is that the more and more of these last minute trucks, it basically interrupts his workflow because he's got trucks to align. He's got trucks that are going to be there. Hey, I'm going to load from 10 to 11. We're going to get a 50-foot flatbed in there. And the truck needs to get out by 11 so that I can be on the job site by 1. I mean, he's got, you know, and he's doing it for 10 or 15 jobs all at once. So anytime one of these trucks come in, that's a last minute, hey, I need X amount of equipment. It really kills our workflow. It means overtime. It means really that the job didn't plan very well. And he would complain about this. And I would hear it. And it's like, yeah, no, I know. He's like, no, you don't get it. Like, this is a problem. You need to make sure that this gets resolved. But when it's just someone's opinion that, hey, I'm getting last minute trucks, there's no way to gauge it. It's just how someone's feeling at the time. So we had the information in here. This was a little bit more of a custom report, but we said, okay, well, why don't we pull the date stamp of when they sent in the request to when they're asking for it at the job. We have that information. Let's might as well create a metric around it. And that's what this one is. So this is a report that we'll look at, I don't know, every 2, 3, 4 weeks, something like that. We'll go back and gauge it every once in a while. You can put a start and end date in so you can keep the information somewhat recent. Yeah. But these are the projects that are going on, and these are the average request times. So E320, there's only one truck, but they were almost, you know, week or a week and a half ahead. This was great. Most of the jobs,
let me just interrupt you. So I just want to make sure that I understand and that everyone else is following. You're saying that you had an issue with requesting trucks at the last minute, and it was causing extra added cost and inefficiency. So you guys said, hey, let's track this. And based on what I'm seeing, the larger the number of hours, the better. Well, I'm not going to say the better, but we know that the smaller number of hours, the worse you are in terms of requesting your trucks. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So if you have 23 hours, that means at 7 a.m., you called and wanted another truck for the next day at 7 a.m. So that day you need to call the trucker, hope that one of the trucking units actually has availability, get the equipment, verify it, load it, get it ready by, you know, a 5 a.m. pickup so that the next truck, the trucker can come pick it up and take off and be at the site at 7 again. So that's a lot that goes on in a last minute truck. So you can see here, and all it's doing is just pulling the average for all of the trucks for all this is the transfer number, the ID number for the transfer. And this is the amount of lead time that was required for each one. you can see the ones here in red. The ones in red mean that you basically, you did a backward transfer, maybe is the best way to say it, which means you went and picked up equipment and then you filled up a transfer saying, hey, I needed this equipment. I just grabbed it. I didn't actually fill one out, but because everything has to go through the inventory process, one got filled out later than what was actually sent to the job. So it shows up here as a very easy indication that either the job got busy here, the job start in UW Bothell, it went well for a while, a couple last minute ones on here, but it went well for the most of the project. Getting off the job, and I happen to know getting off the job was not as fun here. So you can see that it kind of took a hit. But as we do our job reviews and we go back.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you one more time. So I can see the implications behind that. In these instances where someone went in and they took the equipment ahead of time without recording it in the system, it could impact another job where they see that it's available in the equipment, right? That could sort of interrupt the process flow of the job, causing downstream problems. Is that, am I understanding that?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's definitely something to take into consideration, and yeah, a real effect of last minute trucks.
Okay.
It's really about planning, right? Operational. If you're planning out your work, you looked at the drawings, you know what you need, you planned out how you're going to build something, and then you request the information from it. That's what it takes to have a successful job in all assets, not just equipment, but in all fronts. You need that thought process to be successful out there. The more that you see the last minute stuff, that means the less planning is going on. There's not as, it's more firing off or just trying to keep up with the pace of the job. And it kind of speaks a little bit to the way that the job's going. I would probably bet that I could open up the cost report and see inefficiencies across the board, not just from the trucking, but in labor and everything else in this portion of the job as well, just due to the fact on the way that the trucks go. It speaks to a lot more.
No, for sure. Do you guys ever look at trends or anything related to, the request times?
Yeah, we do. Like this one, you can click in here and you can kind of take a look at just how things have been going from a project to project portion and see if there's, again, points where the job is doing a little bit better. Again, here's the three that were a little bit slower, but this project really went well. Then it started to dip off here. I could probably throw a trend line on this report to see it, dip down in here. Obviously not as good down here when it get out of there.
Yeah, I see that the average is an average 50 hours. Now, is that I'm now going into more of a management strategy, but 50 hours, is that what the company said is a good time that you guys need to put the transfers in by, or is it less than that or greater?
No, that's pretty close. We shoot for 2 days or 48 hours. So if it's within there, if you're close, that means, hey, at least you gave the yard manager a day after you've requested it to get everything in line and get everything going. That was kind of his discussion. It'd be greater to go, or better to go more than that, but that's kind of that minimum threshold. We're trying to be above the 48-hour mark.
And so this actually helps you guys create dialogue, I would imagine. You start looking at this and
Yeah, definitely.
Good.
So that was just a couple ones that I wanted to throw out there as we talk about. I see we're 40 minutes in, so we're getting somewhat close. Those are just being able to go again, business intelligence, going back to, can you use information to gauge how you're doing as a company, to ultimately stop the bleeding if necessary. Don't wait till the end where you can look at all this information or look at all this data afterwards and go, oh, we should have done this, we should have done that. But keep it in the front, like what's going on right now? What is happening right now on the project that we can start to see trends where if it's starting to go down, we know that we need to do something, whether it be new leadership or maybe we just need a larger crew or, whatever it may be. Maybe the superintendent just needs help because it's a difficult portion of the job. We need to do something. And you want to, the more information that you can get in front here, even, cost information. I know we're talking about equipment, but if we got into labor and starting to see trends on labor, getting that stuff in front and being, aware of it as fast as you possibly can is just essential for the way that we operate and making sure that we're staying on top of the costs, not 2 weeks later when the cost report is done, but trying to get everything out as soon as possible so you can really see how it's going. Getting away from the call of the superintendent saying, how are things going? It's going, it's going well. Okay, or it's not going very well. And then that's pretty much it, to, no, look, we're 10% under efficiency on X item, whatever you're looking at. That was really our goal and kind of what we're trying to capture.
I love it. And it goes back to changing that data culture. Michael, I'm sure that I feel like we just got started, and I know all the things that you guys are doing and what you're doing with data. And I just would love to have another opportunity later on to have a conversation and maybe show us some more of the things you guys are doing. I just want to take a quick time check. We have 5 minutes left. I appreciate you jumping on, not only telling us, but also showing us. So I think that was very, very helpful. So I want to leave some time for questions. So I'm just going to look. If anyone has any questions for Michael or myself, please feel free to ask. I'll just, oh, wait a minute. Oh gosh, okay, there was one sitting here. So I apologize for the tardiness in getting to these questions, but so this one's for you, Michael. Do you evaluate whether or not to rent or buy equipment?
Yeah, that was actually that inventory, that rent versus own report. So yeah, every 6 months or so, we'll kind of take a look at what we've been renting to see whether or not, and we just have a quick calculation that will plug in on return on whether or not, if we use something for a certain amount of time, is it worth the depreciation, basically. But definitely, that's a big one that you need to know. It's a huge waste of money to rent something out if you could just buy it. And with as much equipment as we have, it's almost a necessity to run that, to make sure that you're being responsible with your equipment.
Okay, great. We got quite a few questions here. Let's see. Okay, so what accounting system do you use? What do you use for project management? Oh, and I would like to know about the integration.
So we use Sage 300, I think is the version. And we use Ops Manager for our project management. So it's got the ability to do RFIs and view drawings and kind of have everything there. We like the one spot, so all of our reporting, all of our, the crews and pictures and everything are all in under one application, which is nice, and with one login. So that's kind of what we use for our PM application. There was one other thing about integration. We don't use the integration. I believe it's a feature, Bruce, you might be able to speak to that. I believe it's a feature, but we handle our Sage data separately in Pronovos and everything else. We bring it in for the financials, but we don't link the projects between the two. It's just a company decision not to do that.
You guys don't write back is what you're saying to Sage.
We don't write back, yeah. Yeah, we pull the data out of Sage, so all those cost reports and everything that you saw that we didn't click into, it's all our accounting data, so we can link everything. But yeah, we don't actually write back, we just view.
Okay, I don't think we'll be able to get through all of these questions, but we could probably take one more. How long have you been using the system for?
We've been in it for 2-3 years now, I believe. We've been full in it for that long now.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. Well, we got 2 minutes left, and I'm just going to stop the questions here. And I just want to close by just saying, I hope that you all found this, informative. For the questions we couldn't get to, Michael, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to get your help or send them to you, and I'll make sure that everyone that attended gets sees your answers.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that, to me, this was informative, and I hope that everyone else it was as well. And at the very least, I hope that you begin to think about ways you can use data to improve your equipment program. I encourage you to be on the lookout for our next webinar. It's going to be pretty sensational. I'm excited about this. I was excited about this one as well. If you have any questions or comments for me, Michael, please feel free to reach out to us using the contact info provided here. And there are just a few poll questions that, launching a poll here. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind just answering the poll questions, and it helps us to make sure that we're providing some valuable content to you. And if we're not, we'll keep working on it. But I hope that you all stay safe, live well, and do good work. So with that being said, I give you the rest of your Wednesday. Thanks again, Michael. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.